It started out slowly. I first noticed the bump on my left arm about a month ago, when I felt an itch under my sweater. The bump was small, maybe the size of a pencil eraser, raised and colorless. At first, I dismissed it as a bug bite, even as I wondered exactly what kind of bug was still alive and biting when it was below freezing outside. The next time my arm itched, a few days later, I thought that perhaps it wasn't a bug bite after all. I showed the bump to a friend who seemed to think that it was just an allergic reaction of something. I switched my laundry detergent and fabric softener to ones with no scent. I stopped wearing my perfume. I even swapped out my deodorant for a milder scent. Still, the bump made no signs of receding, and the itch just worsened significantly. After about a week, my new itchier life had gone by when I noticed that the bump had multiplied and had grown a twin, another raised lump underneath my skin. This one was approximately the same size, and it was just in need of scratching as the first. I bought calamine lotion and numbing spray without much luck. I turned to wearing bandages over the bumps in hopes that not scratching would make them vanish, but whenever my attention would wander, the bandages would end up being ripped off and I'd be furiously scratching once more. The bumps soon multiplied even further, spreading over most of my left arm. I work in food service, and it only took one complaint from a customer for my boss to encourage me to take some time off, without pay, of course. And for those wondering, no, I don't have health insurance, so going to the doctor was out of the question. Welcome to America. A few more days passed, and I spent them mostly parked in front of the television, absent-mindedly itching my arm, growing at my nails on purpose to get that satisfying scratch. Until I woke up in the morning, I saw that my arm was bloody. My nails must have ripped through the first layer of my skin as I slept. I examined the gouges, deeper than I would have expected just from fingernails, and I saw something odd. A little speck of black peeked from underneath the blood, contrasting with the rusty dried red in my pale skin. I went to the bathroom to get my tweezers, wondering if I had somehow gotten a tick burrowed deep into my arm. I pulled a little at the speck and met a significant resistance. Bracing myself, I pulled even harder, yanking upwards with force. The pain that I felt was blinding in its intensity, but even more amazing was the relief that I felt. The deep itch finally within me, gone. I looked at my arm and saw a hole, perhaps the size of a drinking straw, which seemed to go in pretty deep. It oozed fresh blood, and I saw some pus, which I realized I would need to get out later. The hole gaped at me, not closing, and I trembled as I looked at the tweezers still clasped tightly in my right hand. In the tweezers, its head squished significantly, was a black worm about 6 inches in length. It wiggled a little, and I nearly dropped it in disgust. The worm was slick with blood and pus, and it had these little barbs or feet poking out at uneven lengths, twitching with its movements. Not thinking, I opened the lid to my toilet and dropped the thing in. I could almost swear it hissed as it hit the water, and I flushed it before I could even see if it could swim. I used a Q-tip and some peroxide to clean out the hole in my arm, and it hurt like hell, but it almost made me feel clean in a way that I've never felt before. Clean from the inside out. Looking at my arm now as I write this, I can count about 15 more bumps. Now that I know what's under there, I can almost feel them wiggling, moving around my muscles and tendons, nestled into my flesh, carving out holes. It's taken me quite some time to type this because I have to keep stopping to itch. scratching at the little bumps with a fingernail, making sure that the existing hole is still free of any little invaders. I've got a sterilized knife and needle-nose pliers, along with some bandages to patch me up as I go. Hopefully I can stop myself from losing too much blood. I'm thinking of keeping one of the little guys in a jar. Maybe taking it to a local university to see what exactly has been living inside me. Overall, I think I've got the situation pretty well handled, considering. Except, perhaps, for one small complication. I've begun to feel an itch on my chest.
I was always pretty normal. People loved me, from babies to elderly people. I knew how to appeal to everyone. I was pretty smart, straight A's and perfect attendance until middle school. Then it all just kind of turned around. I was failing math and I finally got it up to a B. I felt myself slowly changing into the monster I am today. I wasn't failing because I was stupid. I was failing because I was bored. I would take my class time to draw or write small stories. Then comes ninth grade and I seriously fail everything. That's right. Everything. Even gym. I dropped out after that and started doing homeschooling. Quit that after my mom died. I slowly started to spiral downward after that. Drinking, smoking so many cigarettes I'm surprised my lungs didn't just collapse. I really didn't know what was happening to me and my dad was too busy with his own misery to worry about me. Now I would blame my mother's death for my downfall, but I know that's not it. I've always deep down been this way. Just cold and calculated to get what I want. The slight smile, the compliments. I never did anything if I didn't get anything out of it, even as a child. By the time I spiraled into complete madness, mostly everyone who ever liked me forgot I existed, and that's what makes this so perfect. My first victim was just some girl walking alone on a back road. I'm not really sure what made me do it, but I picked her up in my car. I told her I'd take her back to the house she shared with her boyfriend. They had gotten in a fight. You know, men. I guess she trusted me because I was a woman too, but the gasp and gurgle noise she made when I stabbed her in the chest and the look on her pretty little face as the blood dripped out was priceless. She was gorgeous. Now she's not, with her bleached blonde hair now shaved off and her body rotting in the woods. It's been 3 months and I've had 2 more victims since then. The second victim was some guy at a bar who obviously had too many drinks and was just looking for someone before last call, which I happily obliged. All I had to do was say yes and he took me to his house, which was really nice honestly. If all I wanted was a cash grab, this would be the place, but unfortunately for him, I was not there to rob him. I grabbed a vase and shattered it over his head, knocking him out. He woke up being tied to a table. Well, he tried to scream, but he was gagged. I looked at the fear in his eyes as he looked down and saw the bowl. Then he felt their tiny little feet on his stomach, and I think that's when it hit him. I started burning the charcoal, and the screams as the rats ate through him was music to my ears. I threw his body in the woods the next town over. The third, I basically just picked up some poor drunk girl and said I was the Uber she called. The sound her throat made as I crushed it with all the strength I had in me made me the happiest person alive. Then she stopped struggling and her body became limp and eventually cold to the touch. I took her home with me, dyed her hair the ugliest color I saw on the shelf, and then I dressed her up in raggedy clothes, and I posed her body outside of a crack house. Now, so far, my Victims are just unsuspecting guys at bars. Others are people walking on the streets at night. No victim is the same, and there is no pattern. No one will ever see it coming, and no one will be safe. I feel the urge coming again. It's all I think about. You might want to tell your loved ones to stay inside at night. You won't know where I am or who I'll be in the mood for hunting. Today they've finally found my first victim. Let the panic begin. I tried to be normal, but I love this feeling. Just like everyone loved me.
I don't even know where to start. I guess the beginning's as good as a place as any. So, here it goes. My dad's a pretty average dude, but those who are not as kind as I may even say he's boring. He's an accountant at a mid-level firm who married his high school sweetheart young. He had 3 kids. The oldest, Sam, 22-year-old guy, is in college. Then there's me, the middle kid, 18. And rounding out the trio is my younger sister, Kim, who's 15 and in high school with me. We live a pretty normal upper middle class life. Dad makes enough money that Mom doesn't have to work. My siblings and I each got a car at 16, and college was taken care of. We aren't exactly rich, but we don't want for much either. That's what makes us so strange. We're a pretty open family. My parents are typical, liberal just to be open with us, and if you're drunk at a party, call us instead of driving home with someone, kind of thing. They're kind of like parents in Get Out, but before they start killing all the people. Spoiler alert. Also, not racist. So when my mom texted me to grab something out of her room and bring it back to her at work, it wasn't strange. I was looking for her folder, or was it her makeup? Funny, I can't even remember at this time. But while I was going through the drawers, I found something weird. One of the drawers didn't go as far back as it should have, so I pulled out the one above it just to be sure, and I was right. It didn't come out as far. After some investigation, I pulled out the drawer entirely to find a hidden panel. In that panel was a small, leather-bound book. Only there was no title or design on the front upon opening it. I found it full of handwritten text. I quickly recognized it as my dad's handwriting, but I was confused as to why he had hidden it. At least, I was confused until I started to read it. Then I was scared. I started on page 1.
I'm in trouble. I think they're onto me. I've remained hidden for so long, but they might have found me. I've run from what I've done for so long. So long. Sometimes I wonder if there's any point in continuing. Maybe I'm just crazy. I've been known to overthink things before. That's what got me into trouble last time. But this feels different. This feels real. This feels like something to be afraid of.
That was the first entry. There are no dates or any other indicators of when this was written. I have no idea what he's referring to either. The man is an accountant, not some super spy. But it's not the first entry that I'm concerned about. It's not the second either. The first few entries were mostly like this. They just seemed like delusional ramblings as far as I could tell. I was about to stop reading, and then I came upon... Well, you decide for yourselves.
I did it. I finally did it. It wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it would be. God, it's so true that the anticipation is the worst part. I was so worked up before, but then I just did it, and it felt so good. I haven't even cleaned up yet. As I write this, I bask in the productions of my creation. I met her outside of the bar. She was so sweet. Someone had stolen her keys, she told me, and she needed a ride home. I was happy to oblige. She'd been drinking anyway. The trip home went easy. It kicked in midway there, and she was useless. She even saw her keys in my center console, but by then it was too late. Spider had caught his fly. I took her to my room, and no one heard a thing. It's almost sunrise. They'll be up soon. I should clean up. Until next time.
I was numb by the end of it. I had no idea what I'd stumbled upon. My dad would be home soon, so I needed to put the book back. The one thing that concerned me most was the last entry was dated February 15th, 1999. I wasn't even a year old then, so I searched the date and I found a local news article. Kara Williams, missing. Last seen at Todd's Pub.
Cassandra was a beautiful woman. I swear to the muses that it was love at first sight. When I first caught a glance of her, I was stopped dead in my tracks. Long, flowing, chestnut-colored hair, vibrant green eyes, beautiful olive-toned skin that was flecked with beauty marks, classic Italian beauty, absolutely gorgeous. I must have looked a fool as I stood stricken still on the sidewalk. I had to pick my jaw up from the cement before I could continue on my way to work, and by that time her graceful stride had taken her into a photography studio. I'm no writer, but this woman inspired me to pour out my affections. I saw her from time to time over the next few weeks, always on the busy street, in and out of clothing stores, makeup and photography studios, and taxis. She was a busy woman, socializing and working her way to the top. She was in the right place. This part of the city was model central, and she was more than average model material. Her delicate curves were perfectly shaped for everything she wore. I wouldn't be surprised if she hit supermodel status within the year. That type of beauty is incomparable. I longed for the day when Cassandra might come into my studio. If she remained as well kept as I'd always seen her, then applying her makeup would be effortless. In fact, she'd hardly need any. I painted on beautiful faces for others, all the while wishing I could get the opportunity to have my tools touch her skin. It was a selfish thought, but her face plagued my mind. I was under a spell, and I'd never even spoken to her. I watched her for months. She often modeled at a studio not far from where I worked, and I would see her walking by my own workplace often. I ached to go talk to her, to tell her how she had become my inspiration. I began painting on canvas just so that I could have a clean slate. As much as I tried to bring out the same beauty in my clients, none of them measured up to Cassandra. A blank slate was the only place where I could recreate her image to near perfection. I'd sigh at myself, embarrassed at my feelings for a woman who likely didn't know I existed. My apartment walls became adorned with those paintings. I saw her more each day. I decided that I should work up the courage to speak to her rather than just remain a watcher from afar. I was terrified, though. I was just a lowly artist and she was quickly becoming a high-status model. I didn't want her to think I was just some fan that fawned over her pictures in magazines. I had to at least try, though. I planned to casually run into her on the street after work one of these days. I knew that even if she wasn't walking somewhere, as soon as I left that she would be eventually. I was more than willing to wait. I didn't have to, though. She was brought into my workplace that day. I was shocked. I hadn't seen her around in the last few days and didn't expect this to be the place she'd pop up. After speaking with my boss, she was brought to me for preparation. I was informed that she had been in a car accident and some of the signs were obvious. She'd need her injuries covered up so that she'd look good for her appearance. I was elated to have the chance to work on her. Even the bruises didn't ruin her beauty. Well, I tried to strike up casual conversation, but she was silent. I'm used to quiet clients, though. I wasn't offended. I regretted not trying to talk to her on the street before now. I had planned on getting her to come in here myself. Can't dwell on missed opportunities, though. She was here regardless. By the time I was finished, she looked exactly as she always had. I felt a little sad that this would be the last time I'd ever see her in person. She was still so beautiful, eternally so. I was proud of my work on her. I studied her so well before she came in that I had mastered creating this appearance. You could almost believe that she wasn't a corpse. She'll look beautiful at her funeral.